So you've been thinking about moving to Placerville, but you're not sure if you maybe want to be in a little bit smaller town or up in snow country, or maybe the home prices in Placerville blew your hair back a little bit and you're thinking maybe there's a more reasonable community and you came across Pollock Pines and now you're trying to figure out what's different between the two places. Which one will fit my family better? How do I choose between Placerville and Pollock Pines? Well, then this video is for you because today I'm going to help you answer that question. So I've been getting nonstop requests from people for these town versus town videos because they're trying to decide which town is going to work best for their families. And this one today is near and dear to my heart because I live in Placerville and we spend a lot of time recreating up in Pollock Pines. And these are two great, unique, rural communities with their own distinctive feels, and your family would do great in either one, but definitely they're going to appeal to a different set of people. And I'm going to try to help you nail down today which one of these communities will fit your family the best. Now, maybe you're not just deciding between Placerville and Pollock Pines. Maybe you're looking at some of our other foothills communities and trying to decide between some of them as well. If that's the case, at the end of this video, I'll link to a playlist of all of my town versus town comparison videos so you can find the right place for your family. But when it comes to trying to nail down what community is right for your family, it can be really confusing and hard to figure out when you're from out of town. And that's where I come in. If you've been watching a while, welcome back. And if you're new here, you're probably wondering who I am and why you should listen to me about these communities. That's a fair question. My name's Rich Curtis and I'm with EXP Realty. I've lived in El Dorado County since 1997 and I've been selling homes here for nearly 20 years in markets ranging from the Great Recession all the way to the COVID market insanity and everything in between. So when it comes to El Dorado County real estate, I've got you covered. When it comes to picking a new community for your family, general qualifying questions can only get you so far. Things like, how far off the highway do you want to live? How far of a drive do you want to be to the grocery store, the hospital, or to your kid's school? Above or below snow line, which will come into play in today's video. Do you like to be around oak trees or pine trees, beetles or rolling stones, window seat or aisle seat? You know, all the important stuff. But of course, when it comes to choosing where to live, the place that's going to be the hub of your life for years to come, it requires a deeper dive. And today's video is that deep dive for you. I'm going to run you through 9 critical criteria to evaluate these two communities and see which one fits best for your family. So let's get stuck right into deciding, is Pollock Pines or Placerville right for you? So right off the bat, where are these two communities? Well, they're both on the western slope of the Sierras on Highway 50 between Sacramento and Tahoe. Now, Placerville is almost smack dab right in the middle between Sacramento and Tahoe. It's about an hour from Placerville to downtown Sacramento and about an hour from Placerville east up the hill to South Lake Tahoe. Pollock Pines is about 25 minutes further east or uphill, closer to Tahoe from Placerville. So the two communities are relatively close together, but that 25-minute drive uphill makes a difference, among other things, just for elevation, and also it makes you further from access to things in Sacramento and closer to access to things in Tahoe, which may be part of how you make your decision as to which community will work best for you. Criteria number 1 when deciding to move anywhere is just, what's the place feel like? What's the general vibe of the place? Now, if you've lived in a rural place, it'll be familiar to you. It'll kind of feel like home. But if you've never lived in a rural place before, these are small, rural mountain towns. Placerville has just shy of 11,000 people right now. And it's the kind of place where everybody knows everybody. If you go to the grocery store, you bump into somebody you know. You go to the gas station, you bump into somebody you know. You go to the school pickup line, you bump into 15 people you know. You're having conversations with people you know all day long, everywhere you go. Some people, if they're hypersocial, love that sort of thing. And other people, it's draining and frustrating to them. But that is small town life. Now, Pollock Pines is smaller even again by half. It's just shy of 5,500 people as of the recording of this video. Placerville is at 2,000 foot elevation, Pollock Pines is at 4,000 foot elevation, so it gets quite a bit more snow, which we'll talk about later. But in general, in Placerville, even though it's a small town, you still feel like you live in a town where there's a lot going on. It's the county seat, we have the county buildings here, lots of county jobs, there's a hospital here, and there's lots of schools and lots of education jobs here. So it's a place where it still feels like a lot's going on. You're rural, but you still feel like you're living in a town. Now, when you get to Pollock Pines, it feels a lot more far flung. There's one grocery store, there's 2 gas stations. So 1 grocery store, 2 gas stations, a couple of restaurants, and a hardware store, and that's about it. The people live a lot more far flung and far apart, and in the winter with the snow, they're kind of stay at home a lot. So Pollock Pines is much, much more small town living. Now, my wife often teases me that Placerville is getting to be too big of a town for me because I hate crowds and being around a ton of people. So if you're that kind of person where 11,000 people even sounds big to you, Pollock Pines is going to be the place for you. But if you're the type of person who wants to be more social or spend less time in the car to get to things and do things, then Placerville might be the right fit for you. And we're going to talk about that more as we go along. Criteria number 2 when evaluating these two communities, or really any communities, is what do homes cost there? The cost of your monthly mortgage is usually the biggest line item on anyone's budget. And when deciding to move, the first thing you have to figure out is, can I afford to move there? Can I buy a home there for my family? And in that regard, these two communities are actually pretty far apart. The median home price in Placerville right now, as of the recording of this video, is about $509,000 versus Pollock Pines. The median home price right now is $374,000. That's a big discrepancy. Pollock Pines is one of the most reasonably priced areas in El Dorado County and frankly in the state of California to buy a home in. And Placerville is reaching more along the averages there at $509,000. Now, the bottom of the market in Placerville is going to be around $400,000 if you need a property that's in good enough condition to get a loan on. But be advised, anything at about that $400,000 mark is going to need a lot of work and updating and elbow grease. Now, Pollock Pines, the bottom of the market, if you need to get a loan on it, is going to be about $325,000, and the same goes for homes at that price point in Pollock Pines. They're going to need some effort, some updating, and some work to them. Now, top of the market in both communities is going to be up into the multi-million-dollar range if you have a big budget and you want a huge custom home on acreage. But to put this into perspective, in Pollock Pines, the most expensive home for sale right now is $1.3 million. And that home is a 7-bedroom, 4-bath, 4,600 square foot home on the top of a mountain on 4 acres with views of the South Fork, a swimming pool, and a hot tub. It's gorgeous and amazing. Now, in our two primary relocation markets of LA and the Bay Area, that $1.3 million, as you know, doesn't go very far. If you're in the East Bay, for example, $1.3 million will get you a 120-year-old house, about a 2-1, 1,000 square foot with no HVAC and no windows that open unless you prop them up with a stick. So $1.3 million goes a long, long way in Pollock Pines and even still in Placerville. But far and away, when it comes to the cost of homes, Pollock Pines is going to be far more reasonably priced than Placerville and going to be one of the most reasonably priced communities you can get in the state of California. But what do you get for your money in those two communities? What does that median $509,000 home look like in Placerville? Well, that's going to be about a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,700 square foot home on about a half an acre to an acre in pretty good shape, but it'll probably need a tiny bit of updating. Now, what do you get for your $378,000 in Pollock Pines? Well, that's going to be more of a 3-bedroom, 1-bath to 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, more of a 1,300 to 1,500 square foot home on about a third of an acre, and it'll need a little more updating than the one in Placerville did. One final note here for you on buying homes in these two communities is there is going to be a difference in the style and feel and type of home you get in each community. And this is going to be down to the elevation, which we'll talk more about later, but Pollock Pines gets considerable snow. So down in Placerville, you will have more traditionally shaped homes with lower pitched roofs that look a lot like homes wherever you're coming from. Pollock Pines, due to the snow load, you're going to see a lot more A-frame, chalet style, steep sided roofs to shed the snow. Now this gives Pollock Pines even more of that cute, quaint little mountain town vibe. And quite frankly, it kind of feels like Tahoe on a budget. You'll see the same architecturally designed style homes in Pollock Pines that you would see in Tahoe. And you still have a beautiful lake in Jenkinson Lake in Pollock Pines, just like you have Lake Tahoe in Tahoe. So I've always said that Pollock Pines represents a great value for money because it really is Tahoe on a budget. You have the cool mountain town vibes, you have the cool chalet cabin style homes, you have the lake for power boating and recreation, and you're in the tall pine trees. Now Placerville, by comparison, like I said, will have more traditional style homes, and it'll be lower elevation and less snow to deal with. Criteria number 3 is lifestyle. What's the lifestyle like in these two places? You might think it's pretty similar because they are both small rural mountain towns, and you'd be right. But there are significant differences between the two, and one of those is going to be the pace of life. Now, Placerville, one of the things I love about it is it has a relatively slow pace of life. People are pretty relaxed and laid back here, and they really value their recreation time, their time outside playing. Whether that's mountain biking, kayaking, or fishing or off-roading, people like to be out in nature doing their recreational activities. But Pollock Pines is even a slower pace of life because Placerville has more shopping, has the bigger grocery stores, has our little quaint downtown with all of our shops, and has a tourist attraction because of that downtown and because the county offices are here and we have all of those jobs there. Placerville just has a lot more going on. We have our big fairgrounds where we have not only the county fair, but we also have big events and concerts that happen there. So Placerville is just a faster pace of life with more people, more going on, and more shopping opportunities and more varied shopping opportunities. Placerville is also a lot closer to get down the hill to Folsom. That's the first place you're going to hit all of your big box retail chain store type of shopping. And Sacramento, where there's even more diversity in shopping and restaurants. It's 25 minutes closer to all of that. So in general, Placerville is just going to feel more in the thick of it, more in the hubbub, more access to everything. And even though you in both communities will have to get in the car to do almost anything, whether that's go on a play date with the kids or go to the grocery store or go to a park, you're getting in the car. Everything's a lot closer in Placerville than it is in Pollock Pines. Now, Pollock Pines, like I said, there is one grocery store, 2 gas stations, a couple of restaurants, and a hardware store. And that's about it for shopping. For anything else, you're going to drive the 25 minutes down the hill to Placerville, and then if Placerville doesn't have it, you can go another 35 minutes down the hill to Folsom, and sometimes you might have to go the full hour and 20 down to Sacramento. So if you're living in Pollock Pines, it feels slower, it feels a little more rural, a little more disconnected and isolated than it does in Placerville. Now that's not a negative. For a lot of residents in Pollock Pines, that's a positive. That's why they're there. So if you're that kind of person, you want to be more disconnected, more out there, more on your own, Pollock Pines is absolutely for you. Now, if you have the kind of young kids that are involved in everything, they're going to, ballet and soccer and swim team and everything else. If you live in Pollock Pines, that's going to be a boatload of driving for you. If you live in Placerville, it's going to be a lot less driving and a lot easier to get to all of that stuff. So keep that in mind when it comes to lifestyle. Pollock Pines is going to be longer drive times, more time in the car, and Placerville is going to be less. Pollock Pines is going to be slower, less people, and more isolated, and Placerville is going to be faster paced, more people, and more access to everything. Hey, if by the end of this video you still aren't sure if Pollock Pines is for you, or Placerville, or El Dorado County, or Sacramento County, feel free to reach out to me via the contact information on your screen or in the description down below. I've been selling homes here for nearly 20 years and I've helped hundreds of families just like yours decide where to land in El Dorado County, and I'm always happy to help. All right, now on with deciding whether Pollock Pines or Placerville is a better fit for your family. Criteria number 4 when evaluating these two communities is recreation. And on this one, they're going to be very, very similar. The recreation in both these places is going to be a wilderness style recreation, and the type of recreation where you have to have your own skills and your own equipment to do it. There's not going to be a lot of places to rent gear or get instruction. It's really recreating on your own out in the wilderness. 75% of the landmass in El Dorado County is protected open space. So there's just a ton of trails, lakes, rivers, streams to go explore, and even great waterfall hunting. Now, when it comes to the difference between the two, Pollock Pines is just a little bit further east, and they have the lake. Placerville is a little bit further west, and we have the rivers. Both places will have great hiking trails. Both places will have great mountain biking trails. Placerville is going to have the Whitewater with the South Fork of the American River. It's the second most commercially rafted river in the country. It's great for whitewater kayaking, it's great for whitewater rafting, and it's great for just spending a day down by the river. But it does require a little bit of skill if you actually want to get on the water and play. If you don't have those skills already, then it's something you might have to take a course or pay an outfitter to guide you down the river for the day. Pollock Pines is going to have the lake, Jenkinson Lake. Jenkinson Lake is amazing. It's like a mini Lake Tahoe. There's an 8-mile hiking, walking, mountain biking trail all the way around the whole thing, and there's even a beautiful waterfall that you can access with about a 4.5 mile hike from the second dam, or you can drive to the end of the road at the end of the campgrounds and get there in just about a mile hike. So with your smaller boats on Jenkinson Lake, this is where you're going to be able to do your wakeboarding and water skiing and all of that stuff. There's also a great big cove that is restricted to 5 miles an hour where you can do your paddleboarding and canoeing and kayaking and all that sort of stuff. And it's great to have the kids play on the beaches in that area because you're not getting sloshed around by the wakes from all the boats. So Jenkinson Lake is an amazing place to recreate up in Pollock Pines. When it comes to water sports, it's a place that doesn't require as much skill as the water sports down in Placerville. Also, Pollock Pines is just that one bump closer to everything in South Lake Tahoe. It's about an hour drive from Placerville to South Lake Tahoe, and it's down to about a 40-minute drive from Pollock Pines, which is really great. So if you're the kind of person that wants to be hitting Tahoe all the time in the summer or the winter, then Pollock Pines is even closer to all of that for you. So both communities have amazing recreation. It just depends on what kind of recreation you'd like. Also, the big caveat to this is Placerville is going to have more year-round recreation. So if you want to be mountain biking year-round, Placerville is the place for you because Pollock Pines is going to get a lot of snow and the mountain biking is going to be shut down. The hiking is going to be shut down in Pollock Pines in the winter unless you like snowshoeing or cross-country skiing, right? There's not going to be much water sports going on up in Pollock Pines in the winter, whereas people still kayak all winter long down in Placerville. So if you aren't a snow sports person, then you're probably going to be happier in Placerville than Pollock Pines. Now, all that talk of recreation segues perfectly into criteria number 5, which is elevation. Now, I don't use elevation as a criteria to evaluate all communities, but when it comes to Pollock Pines versus Placerville, elevation makes a big difference. Placerville is around 1,800 to 2,000 feet above sea level. Pollock Pines is 4,000 feet above sea level. The snow line around here is 3,000 feet, right about the town of Camino. So Pollock Pines is legitimate snow country. If you drive to Tahoe often, then you've probably driven through the town of Kybers. Most people don't realize this, but Pollock Pines and Kybers are about the same elevation. You go up to Pollock Pines, back down, and then back up to Kybers. So in the winter, you get significant snow in Pollock Pines. You can have 4-foot snow drifts that last for weeks on end. So if you don't like snow, Pollock Pines is not the place for you. Now, Placerville, by contrast, gets a couple of dustings a few times a year, enough snow to be pretty and fun, and not enough snow to be inconvenient really in any way, with the occasional every 10 or 15 years, one big storm. But snow is going to be an every day or every few days or every couple of weeks, depending on the winter, part of your life in the winter in Pollock Pines. And it's going to be significant snow. It's going to mean shoveling snow, shoveling out your car. It's going to mean driving slow or being behind people who are going slow or don't know how to drive in the snow. And there's one road in and one road out for the most part in Pollock Pines. And so you can really spend a lot of time stuck on Sly Park Road when it gets snowy. So elevation makes a big deal. Now, there's one other way that elevation affects both of these communities, and that is temperature. Both places are a hot place to live in the summer. People don't think that. They think we're up in the mountains and it's going to be nice and cool in the summer, but it's really not the case. Our river canyons act like a nice little conduit to bring all that heat from the Central Valley right up the river canyons and drop it here in our mountain towns. Placerville can see triple digits quite frequently in the summer. Pollock Pines, by contrast, is going to run about 10 degrees cooler than Placerville all summer long, and that is significant. A lot of homes in Pollock Pines don't even have air conditioning, versus you really don't want a house in Placerville without air conditioning. It is so nice up there in the summer by comparison that my family often makes that 25-minute drive east and spends our summer days around Jenkinson Lake up in Pollock Pines because we've got the water and it's a lot cooler. So that elevation gives you the snow in the winter, but it also gives you cooler temperatures in the summer. You'll have to decide what's best for your family. Criteria number 6 is cost of living. Now, of course, earlier we went over the most important cost of living, your mortgage, which is the single biggest line item on most people's budget, but there's also all those other costs of utilities, heating and cooling the home, getting around, all of that. Now, in that regard, the two communities are going to be pretty close together with a couple of exceptions due to that elevation. Pollock Pines is going to be much colder in the winter. Both places use propane for heat if you don't burn wood for heat. So if you're running just propane versus propane in both communities, you're going to burn a lot more propane up in Pollock Pines because of the snow and the colder temperatures. Now, a lot of homes, most of them in fact, have some kind of wood burning stove or fireplace in Pollock Pines, and a lot of people burn wood to heat their homes in the winter for that reason. It's beautiful ambiance and fun to have a crackling fire going, but it's also a cheaper way to heat the home than propane. Now, by contrast, your electric bill, they're both on PG&E, which is relatively expensive power in the state of California, but they are different in temperature. Again, Pollock Pines is going to run that 10 degrees cooler. A lot of homes in Pollock Pines don't have air conditioning. They might run a swamp cooler, or they might not run anything at all. So in Placerville, your electric bills are going to be higher in the summer because you're going to be running your air conditioning more because of that extra 10 degrees. Now, the final place where the two are going to cost a little bit different is going to be in terms of gasoline. The actual cost of gasoline at the pump will be the same, but with gas being about $4.50 to $5.50 a gallon, living in a more far-flung place like Pollock Pines, where you're driving longer distances and burning more fuel, means your monthly fuel bill for the vehicles is going to be higher in Pollock Pines than it is in Placerville. All right, if you want a deeper dive into the cost of living in either of these two communities, then go ahead and check out the cost of living playlist on my channel. I have a detailed video on the cost of living in Pollock Pines and one on the cost of living in Placerville that runs you through all the costs and gives you the actual numbers so you know exactly what it'll cost you to live in either of these places. If you've made it this far and you're getting anything at all out of this video, click the like button, hit subscribe, and click the bell so you don't miss another video with critical information to help you with your move to El Dorado County, like the many upcoming community comparison videos I have coming out in the next few weeks. Criteria number 7 when evaluating these two communities is fire insurance. Now, this is a big deal across the entire state of California. Over the last several decades, we've had a ton of fires, and it's driven up the cost of fire insurance for everyone in the state. If you live here, you know. And if you're coming from outside of California and thinking about moving in, you need to know because it does affect the cost of your monthly mortgage. So hazard insurance in both these communities is going to be high compared to someplace in the city, but Pollock Pines is going to be even higher. They're both rural communities in heavily treed areas and higher fire severity zones. I tell my clients in Placerville to estimate $3,000 to $6,000 minimum for your annual premiums on your homeowner's insurance, but it can get to over $10,000 if you have a larger, more expensive home. Now in Pollock Pines, I tell people to estimate at least $5,000 to $6,000, and it can very quickly get over $10,000 regardless of the home size because of the fire severity zones and how heavily treed the area is. So when it comes to determining where you can get a more reasonably priced home, you've got to run the numbers. You've got to do a full PITI payment. PITI means principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, what we're talking about. Now, you can run one for a home you like in Pollock Pines, and you can run one for a home you like in Placerville, get insurance quotes on both of them, and see how it really shakes out, because the additional cost of insurance in Pollock Pines will reduce your buying power, and the lower cost of insurance in Placerville will increase your buying power a little bit. So the disparity between the two communities might not be as big as you think when it comes down to monthly payment because of this fire insurance issue. Now, you can figure that out by using some online mortgage calculators, or that's something I can help you with. You can reach out to me via the contact information on your screen or in the description down below, and I can run some payment scenarios for you and give you an idea of how that shakes out. But either way, you gotta know that fire insurance is going to be higher here in El Dorado County than it would be in the city where you're coming from. Now, if you're in a hilly location where you're coming from, like if you're in the Oakland Hills, you're already familiar with this. It'll be pretty similar. Or if you're in some of the canyons outside of San Diego or LA where the fires have happened, you already know, you're already dealing with this, and it won't blow your hair back as much. But if you're coming from San Jose or even from Sacramento, and you're used to, say, $1,200 to $3,000 annual premiums, the cost of insurance here can really blow your hair back. Criteria number 8 when evaluating these two communities is schools. I'm a parent myself, I have 2 little kids, so schooling is very important to me. And I won't bury the lead here. Either community you move to, you're gonna have great schools to go to for your kids. And in fact, there isn't a high school in Pollock Pines, which could be a consideration for you. You're gonna have to get your kids down to Placerville if you move to Pollock Pines once it comes time for high school, but the kids in both communities are going to be going to the same high school, so there's really no difference there. Now, if you start doing your research and checking something like greatschools.org, you'll find that most places in Placerville have an 8 out of 10 or higher score on greatschools.org, with the exception of our 2 high schools, El Dorado and Union Mine High School, which have a 7 out of 10 score on greatschools.org. When you look at the schools in Pollock Pines, you're going to find they all have, well, there's 2 of them, and they have a 4 out of 10 score on greatschools.org. They only have the elementary school and your Sierra Ridge Middle School. Now, both these schools are great schools with dedicated teachers doing an amazing job for our kids up there. And I don't want that 4 out of 10 to scare you off from Pollock Pines. That is really a reflection of the way resources and money are allocated in our educational system. And I won't go too deep into that because we'll all get into a fight in the comments section. But when it comes down to it, small rural communities with small populations and less kids, the type of community like Pollock Pines that can only support 1 elementary school, 1 middle school, and no high school, simply don't get the money and the resources that bigger places like Placerville do, and you see that reflected in those scores. I do encourage my clients to read up and research and check scores on places like greatschools.org, but in this case, having lived here, having friends that work in these schools, having interacted with the kids that come out of these school systems, the Pollock Pines school system is really excellent. They just don't have the resources that someplace like Placerville does. Now, if that's an issue for you and you really want bigger school systems with more schools to choose from and more resources, then that could be a deciding factor for you. You may want to choose Placerville. Also, you are going to have to drive further when it comes to high school time if you live in Pollock Pines because there isn't a high school there. So you're going to have to get your kids the 25 minutes down the hill to go to El Dorado High School here in Placerville. All right, that wraps up schools. If you want more information on that, feel free to reach out to me via the contact information on your screen or in the description down below. My wife is a lifelong educator up here, so we've got a lot of good insights into the school system here. Criteria number 9 and the final criteria on our list is employment. Now, this is going to be a big discrepancy. Frankly, Placerville is just going to have a lot more job opportunities than Pollock Pines. Pollock Pines is a really small town. If you don't work at the grocery store, the couple of restaurants, the 2 gas stations, or the hardware store, then pretty much you're commuting to work down the hill somewhere, or you're an entrepreneur. You work for yourself. You're a mechanic, an accountant, a realtor like myself, that sort of thing. If you need greater job diversity than that, then Placerville has a lot more for you. We have the hospital here, so we have a lot of healthcare jobs. We're the county seat, so we have the county office buildings here. We have a lot of the county jobs, and we have a lot of schools, so there's a lot more education jobs here in Placerville. We're also 25 minutes closer to places like Folsom and Sacramento, where there's incredible job diversity. So when it comes down to jobs, if you're moving to Pollock Pines, you're really committing to being an entrepreneur or to getting in the car and commuting a fair distance for work. Placerville has a much greater chance that you will live and work in your same community, or that if you have to commute, it's going to be a shorter commute. All right, this wraps up our comparison of Pollock Pines to Placerville, and I hope this information has helped you decide which community would be a better fit for your family. Now, if you've decided on which one, or maybe you still haven't decided, but you want to take a deeper dive into these, I have a pros and cons video for each of them. So click this video right here for the pros and cons of living in Pollock Pines, and click this video right here for the pros and cons of living in Placerville. And if you're still comparing some of our other foothills communities, you're not sure if either one of these communities is right for you, you can click this playlist down here for all of my town-to-town comparison videos for our towns here in the foothills. As always, I so appreciate you watching and sticking with me to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.